Hello, everyone. This is Tracy D. Armstrong back again with What's Your Mess? Mental, emotional, social, and status of living. Today, our special guest is Miss Adonia Dickson. Welcome, Miss Adonia. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Good morning and welcome to you as well. I'm so glad to be here. Well, my name is Adonia Dickson. I am a younger sister. I'm the youngest of three. Was born in the state of California. And I'm happy to be here today. What I do and what I enjoy doing is lifting people up. And I had a long journey in my life. So part of why I do what I do is because I figured a way to get through some of the challenges that I had. And I wanted to gift that to other people because I see good in most in all things. And I wanted to be able to be a person that is positive over being negative. Negativity is easy to be. And it took me so long to walk myself through that. And I want to be that light for somebody else. I have this saying that I want to be somebody, because there are people that came into my life that helped me become who I've become. And now I feel like I owe it to others.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know, like you actually just mentioned, you've gone through some situations in life that you've had to overcome and you've had to come out of. Could you tell our audience what was your mess that you've had to clean up?
You know, I believe it had everything to do with low self-esteem. I was a very innocent, kind of naive, shy child. I felt inadequate for many reasons. And I believe, if I can recall, it started with my childhood. School was difficult for me. I had a tendency to be teased a lot. And here's what's interesting. I didn't fit in because white folks, I went to school that was predominantly white kids, didn't get us because of our skin color. But it was the Black girls that I had the biggest challenge with. And that's because they would always accuse me of, oh, you think you're cute. That was the last thing I thought. If anything, I was the opposite of cute. I felt very inadequate. I felt awkward. I felt ugly. Lots of negative adjectives that I can think of. And what I find interesting with them is they would tease me because I was proper. And I didn't understand that. I enunciated in my words. So I guess because I did that, I was too white. I was accused of acting like a white. I just was confused. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. And for the longest time, my journey of believing I wasn't good enough was in my DNA. And that's everything I did and everywhere I was, I believed I wasn't good enough. And I believe a lot of us suffer through that. But I didn't know at the level. I was well into my 30s plus before I really started to turn the table.
Wow. I completely understand. I had to go through some of the same things, especially like the proper speaking and the saying that you want to be white. I was called the Oreo, all those things. So completely understand. So how did that affect you mentally?
Mentally, I was a basket case. And here's what's interesting. I had a tendency to try to, I think innate in my DNA that I would compare myself to other people, and they were always better. No matter who they were always better than me. I don't know where I got that from. And I say this because I come from a loving family. My mother specifically, she knew of my challenges and did everything she could to ingrain in me, you are good enough, you are pretty, blah, 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 blah. Never believed it. And I didn't realize until well into my adult life that I was so negative, and I had the ability to change that narrative. And I find what was interesting is my mother, loving to the point where, and I wrote a book, and I wrote it in this book. I used to get into their clothes because I thought if I put some cute on that I would make me feel better. It didn't. Mm-hmm. It didn't. And I would get in trouble. And there was a point, I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this. And I got into my mother and my sister's closets, always putting on stuff that they had, thinking that was good, again, gonna make me feel better when I went to school. For a moment maybe, but it really didn't. And it got to the point where I had so much of their items, I had to put stuff in a garbage bag to figure out how I was going to sneak it back into the house or sneak it back into the room. Because what I did was I would stick it under my bed or put it in my closet. And then my sister started complaining about where her clothes were. And then all of a sudden my mother was missing stuff. And I'm playing all innocent. They know something's going on, but they're not quite sure what it is. And my not so bright self realized I had so much. I had shoes, this, whatever. And I put them in a bag, and it ended up being a bigger bag. So I say garbage bag, but it was a plastic bag. And I was trying to give it back to them and made the decision that, because I was thinking somebody was coming home or something. And I got nervous and I opened up my window, had it in a bag and put it at the side of the house. My bedroom was on the side of the house. So now here's my brain, my thought at that time. The side of the house was near our neighbor. No one goes on that side of the house. So I would eventually be able to get it and go bring it back in the house. No, my mother, who had a beautiful garden, loved the backyard, loved my backyard, decided that particular weekend she was going to be out in the yard. And she's mowing the lawn, and we had peach trees and lemon trees. It was just my favorite place in the world because it was just a beautiful backyard. And happened to go to the side of the house. Never ever has she been on that side of the house that I'm aware of, but she happened that day. And she saw that bag and brought it in the house. Now, you think I'd have been done got beat or something. No, she sat me down. She asked me to explain. I explained. And she took me to the store and she bought me clothes and told me, first, don't never get in other people's stuff. And second, you don't need these clothes, but I'm gonna get these for you, because she understood the pain that I was going through. She should have put me on suspension and locked me down in that room. She didn't. That's my mother. She loved you in spite of yourself. And what I learned in that lesson is she can love me all she wants. I needed to love myself, and I didn't. And that began my journey.
Mm. And so, man, what a story. See, my mama would not have sat me down and talked to me. I would have got that other adverse reaction.
Most of us would have.
Exactly. So that is amazing. The fact that you did have a mother that loved you to where she understood. And like you say, it started your journey. So how did it affect you emotionally? Because obviously that's what your mindset was. How were your emotions affected by the way you thought about yourself?
I mean, it affected everything I did and didn't do. I would say no to just about everything. I was very quiet. When I asserted myself, it was probably with the wrong person, because they would get back at me and then I would surrender. I would succumb to whatever name calling that they did. I cried all the time. I was a big crybaby. I annoyed the heck out of my brother and sister. My brother he's my road dog. That's my love. My brother and I we have a great relationship. My sister and I don't have a great relationship, and I still haven't figured that part out. I wish we could be. I've always wanted to have the big sister, but she admitted she didn't like me. And that just tops me over to this day, that I have a sister that doesn't like me. But I've realized that's not my issue anymore. That's her issue. Whatever the issue is between her and me is hers, because she's still my sister. I wrote her a letter that says, regardless of whatever is going on, you're still my sister. And that was the theme throughout my whole letter. Every time I said a statement, but you're still my sister. You don't like me, but you're still my sister. And when I realized that, I don't control that. Her narrative is hers, mine is mine. And we tolerate one another. And that's fine. If that's where the relationship needs to be, that's where it needs to be. I can't force that for her. I can't force her to explain to me what the issue is, why I'm her problem or her nemesis or whatever the case may be. It's not my issue. I know she's my sister. I know I love her from the distance, that how we deal with one another. And if that's okay for her, there's nothing else that I could do, right? I'm empowering her to be who she is, and I'm taking my power to be who I am. If she chooses not to like me, that's her choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And I'm thinking that because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about my mother and her sister, and they kind of had that same type of relationship until last year. And it was because I was sat them down and I was like, hey, let's have this conversation. But a lot of times you have to have that conversation before things actually are able to come out to have an understanding of why those emotions are there attached to that relationship. So just a thought for next year, maybe.
But you got a good point, because I would has offered to have a conversation. She's no interest.
Right.
And I can make up stories, because I'm thinking, okay, maybe, because I was born, and she was the big sister and she didn't want those sisters. I have my own stories too, but then those are stories. That don't mean that's the truth. I don't know her truth. I know
Right.
my interpretation of her truth, but it doesn't mean that I'm correct. So I've learned to control what I can control, but that's been over time. I've been through the pain and the journey that I had to go through. That in itself is a story. But I'm there, and I'm happy to be there, because now I want to help the next person get there.
Right, right. So with this, and in growing up and with the process that you were going through, how did this affect you socially? I know as far as with your family, but what about any other social aspects, your social circle? Did that affect you? Did that have an effect on those that you were around? And like you said, how people handled you and how people treated you?
Everything. I think for me, it affected everything, and it affected everything because I always believed I was the one in the wrong, that I didn't know what I'm supposed to know. Everybody knew more, but everybody was always in front or better than me. So socially, I did not have a lot of friends. I was a quiet person. I didn't, until high school. Even high school, I was teased a lot. Especially in high school, I was teased a lot. But here's what happened that changed that narrative for me. I started not having, what I believe, not a lot of choices, because I ended up becoming a teenage parent right outside of high school. I had a child. I was my senior year is when I became pregnant and had my child just right at graduation. So I was a teenage mother. So that in itself, that's a whole different dynamic, right? So now I have this little person, this baby girl that I'm supposed to mentor and bring up and raise. And she had to grow up with me, because I'm a mess. I don't know who I am. But I mean, I loved her dearly. And I have to say, I believe I was a decent mother, not knowing anything, being a 17, 18 years old, having a child. And she grew up with me, but grew me up. I was responsible anyway, but from the social aspect, she was my road dog. I mean, we did everything together. I took my commitment once the commitment was made to make sure I knew to have that child. I had choices, right? But I just didn't see the other direction being a good option for me, because I do happen to be a responsible person. But it was challenging as all get out, but valuable, worthy. It's probably the best thing I've ever done, meaning I'm proud of me for making that decision to do right by this child. And I have a beautiful woman daughter that's very independent and well off, even well off 10 times better than I was ever, in her age. And I'm proud of that. But I had to go through the struggles, which again, part of my journey, right? That's part of my mess, is teenage parenting, low self-esteem, having to raise this child with minimal, not minimal support, because my mother loved me through it. I'm telling you, I had a village around me, but even my village couldn't get me out of my dark. I had to journey myself through that darkness. And I believe I successfully did it, because I'm in a much better place as I age, and I'm happy to be of age that I am, and I'm happy to say that I'm a pretty darn content person. But I had to go through that mess, and there was a lot of mess and a lot of stuff in between that mess. So it impacted me massively socially. I was a person that just didn't feel comfortable around people, didn't do well around people, and kind of hibernated and hid myself a lot.
Okay. And that kind of actually answers, I was going to ask, how did it affect your status of living? But like you said, being a teenage mother, pretty much having to grow up and have someone right there with you, growing up with you. Now, like you said, you had that mess and you had other messes in between the messes.
Mhm.
Tell her, what did you do? How did you clean up your mess? How did you come out? How did you get through the situations that you went through?
That's so loaded. That's a whole nother conversation. But in general, this is what I believe, and something I still believe I'm going to do. I keep saying I'm going to do it because that's how I started off. I did write a book about what I would tell my 5-year-old self. And it's all that stuff about how we make life so much more difficult than it has to be because we're in our heads and in our feelings, right? But the book that I really, really want to write, and so much so that I even have it drafted and I have the domain name and all this other stuff, is how books saved my life. I literally believe books saved my life. And I say that one because, and I love my mother for it because she's the one that makes me love to read. When we were kids, we got story time and we got read. My mother, we cuddled and we read books together. As a mother, she did that with all of us. And so I loved books because I think my parent is the one that introduced me to the books. But I say books saved my life because in all the negative, horrible, I don't love myself moments that I had and that I lived through for so long, it was books and people like the Lisa Nichols and the Les Browns and even Tony Robbins, and I can just go on and on and on, that are very motivational and inspirational people. Les Brown being the one that comes in my head first, Lisa because of the secret. But I say Les Brown because I saw him on what we call public TV, right? Public PSA, public whatever it is, station. And he was like, it's possible and all this motivational stuff. It was him that started planting the seed. I think I was 20 in my young 20s and I had the baby or had the little daughter at that time. And I was just messed up. And I saw him on public television and something about his power and his motivation and whatever led me to books and to him. And then the Lisa Nichols and The Secret, and and I participated with her and actually did some volunteer work with her. So I've had intimate time with her. Les Brown, I joined a thing with him when he came to California and became one of his group, which is interesting how I met someone that we know very dearly to us that we're working with and through in his group, and that's Antonio T. Smith Jr. And I say that deliberately because that is his name and that's how we address him. And I didn't like him at first, but that's a different conversation. Me and him had a little, I was like, anyway, that's my boy. But we got on stage with Les Brown and were able to connect with Les Brown. I was able to, those people don't realize how much impact they had in my life and I got books surrounded. I got a big old 2-thing bookshelf, 5 shelves, books all over. I mean, everywhere you look, I can pull a book out and put it in your hand. I'm looking at Michelle Obama's, who I just recently saw. Those types of people empower me. And that began the journey of how I figured it out. But the biggest book, I told you about Person, but one of the biggest books is, and I got to that book a little different than most people, is Think and Grow Rich. Okay, everybody knows about it, right? I would say most people do, but the way I got to it is a little different. Think and Grow Rich is the book by Napoleon Hill. It's all about our thoughts and we are who we think we are. It's kind of the concept of the book, but the way I got to it was not through Napoleon Hill. It was through Dennis Kimbro, Professor Dennis Kimbro. He wrote the Black version of Think and Grow Rich. Some people don't know that and didn't realize that. I didn't know about the Napoleon Hill piece until I read his book. And again, a book led me to that book. And the reason why his story really quickly was about Napoleon Hill's, that organization knew that they wanted to reach all people. And they didn't know how to reach Black folks because they knew that conversation was going to be more slighted to people that are not of color. And so when Napoleon Hill passed away, the organization reached out to Dr. Professor Kimbrough and asked him, would he be willing to take the draft of that portion of it and molded specifically to Black people. It is the best story in the world to people of color. And that's the book I got to before I even knew Napoleon Hill's original version. It is the best thing. And those seeds got planted. And the more those seeds got planted, I was able to water them, pull all the weeds out, and sprout it to where I realized I control that narrative. And over some time, with practice and practice and failure and practicing and failure, I realized it's the stories we make up to a situation that causes us to feel how we feel. People don't make us feel bad. People, life's not hard unless we think life is hard. We get to change that narrative. When that light bulb came on, yes, I was in my 40s. When that happened, you couldn't tell me nothing. I got wings and I was able to fly. And I'm proud of the journey, but my struggles were real, but they were all emotionally made up by myself not having the wisdom that I was in control of it.
Right. Wow. That's good. And that Think and Grow Rich, that's, and I didn't know about I'm glad you mentioned that. I did not know about the version that was focused more towards Black people.
Most people don't. I have it sitting on my I can see it on my bookshelf right now. And it's Think and Grow Rich, the Black choice. And he's saying we are victims of, and I'm, good reason why, because how we got here, right? All the things that we didn't have control over, people took from us, and we worked and didn't get paid. We can go deep into the history, but I think I don't have to go there. But when you see his version, and the fact that I saw his version first, it changed everything for me. I had to go get the Napoleon Hill version of it. I mean, similar, but he spoke to me, and I knew he was talking to me, a person of color, and he knew and got me. And because of that, I think everybody should consider, regardless of your color, your skin, your heritage, where you come from. It's a beautiful piece and very empowering. And those are the journeys that I've taken by reading these books and meeting these people, or if not meeting them, seeing them on some kind of a TV show or program or interview or what have you. It's beautiful. And you can probably feel it excites the bejesus out of me, whatever that is. It's those books that really, between the books, my parenting, which is my father, I lost to COVID a couple years ago. Still, he was very stern and what have you, but he plays an impact in my life as well. Lots of things have happened. I'm in a happy, content place right now, and I want to give it to anybody that I cross paths with. I want to share that with them.
And I'm glad you just said that. So, what advice would you give to any of the listeners who may be going through a similar type of situation or mess in their lives when it comes to any of those stories that you told us about? What would you tell them today?
The biggest lesson that I learned is, and there's a book with this title, What Other People Think of You Is None of Your Business. They have a right to think what they think. The way and the suggestion that I have is, you are never, ever going to get rid of negative self-doubt. And I don't say that to be negative, but self-doubt, fear, it's part of our DNA. There's not a human being, don't care how much money they have, don't care where they come from, I don't care if they're a movie star, I don't care if there's someone down the street. Everybody has those feelings of discomfort and fear and not being good enough in comparison. We all do it. So it's part of it. Just become friends with it. I have learned to be friends with it. When I can talk myself out of misery and negative in a heartbeat. And I do that because I know it's there. So I visit it. When it shows up, I say, you did it again. Or when I want to give up, which I have, this is stupid, I can't do this, I never can figure stuff out. Never don't exist, because never just doesn't exist. Bottom line is, we say that because our feelings are causing us to think the way we think. Get out of your feelings, or don't get out of them, talk to them. Me and my self-doubt are buddies. I don't like it, but we talk. When I go there, I say, okay, there you go again. I see you, I hear you, I'm gonna move on, or I'll walk away. Sometimes you just gotta walk away for a minute, go do something else, go put on some music, go dance, distract yourself. and then come back to whatever it is that caused you the issue or the person, rethink it. Because here's one thing that I absolutely suggest a person does. As soon as you say left, I'm going to suggest you also go right and ask the question, but what if? What if it's not what if it's something else? What if I'm good enough? What if? Go the opposite direction of what you're thinking. If somebody hurt your feelings or some man done something to you and you think, oh, they cheating or whatever, go the other way. But what if he's not? What if he's late because of this other reason? What if he didn't answer the phone because of something else? We make up stuff. Go the opposite direction. That'll get you a little bit away from the negative and might get you to rethink differently and then process through. I can process through my madness and my mess on a regular, and it happens on a regular. But I also know that I have control over it too. Once you are empowered to know that, I think, oh my God, the sky's the limit. I mean, there's just none. You can do anything, but get friends with your negative self-talk. Don't try to get rid of it. It's not going anywhere.
That is a great piece of advice. I'm going to use that. Become friends with it. And I love the way you explained that. Like, oh, there you go again. Okay.
Talk to it. Give it a name.
Have that conversation.
Nisha, Carol, call it whatever you want to. Bobo, don't care. I see you. I know you're there. Acknowledge it. When you see a problem and you can acknowledge there's a problem, it's easier to resolve it.
That's right.
It sounds crazy. I know and I'm crazy anyway, so it works for me. It sounds crazy, but just know it's there. Don't try to fight it. It's not worth fighting it. Just say, I know you're there. I know I'm in my negative thing. What's the opposite of me being negative? Can I go outside in the sunshine? Can I go color? Go put on some music? Change your disposition by doing something different. And usually an answer will come. If you don't have the answer, there's someone else has it. Ask somebody. I don't like social media at the level that it is, but there's things you can go Google something. Go ask Google. If I feel like crap, what do I do? Google gonna have an answer for you.
It will. It will. It'll have an answer one way or the other.
One way or another.
That's a great bit of advice. And as we come to a close, again, I want to say thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate you for coming out and sharing your mess with the listeners. Are there any last words for our audience?
I just want to thank you. I thank you for letting me be part of your platform. And every single one of us has a gift, regardless of what it is, how big or small. Every single one of us can do one thing to make your day beautiful. And here's what I believe. Go smile at somebody. Go open the door for somebody. Sometimes get out of your head. If you get out of your mess and you go help somebody else, maybe lift them up out of their mess, for even if it's for a moment, you've done something wonderful. And your life will be different and you will be different from it. Just open the door. Buy somebody some coffee. I love doing that. I'll go to Starbucks and I'll buy myself a cup of coffee and I'll say, here's money. Let this person buy what they want to buy. It's the baby things that you do in life those are where the real joy happens. Go do something for somebody else.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. Go do something for somebody else today. So as I close, I like to leave you with this little quote that I always like to share. Remember, if you want to stay sad, live in the past. If you want to be anxious and worried, keep thinking about the future. But if you want to be happy, focus on the present and be grateful for the things that you have. This is Tracy